You know what we got going on right there, don't you? Water under the bridge. That's right, water under the bridge. So it's getting near the end of the year, and I thought that it might be fun to take a look back at the big upgrades that we got done on the boat and just take a rough look at how much we spent on all this stuff, modernizing this old girl. But I will say you have to look at money that you're putting into a boat kind of like that, kind of like water under the bridge, because let's face it, you're not going to get that money back. It's not really an investment because boats depreciate pretty fast. So you have to look at it as, did it serve its purpose, with its purpose being helping you get more days on the water or get more enjoyment out of the days you get out on the water. So let's dive in and see if we accomplished that. All right, well, you've all heard the sayings and the euphemisms and the acronyms and all that stuff. You know, boat just stands for break out another 1,000, or a boat is nothing more than a hole in the water that you pour money into. And you know, this boat's been no different. In fact, none of the boats I've ever owned have been any different than that. Even my little 22-foot sailboat still needs a few things on it to make it seaworthy again. But this old boat was built in 1986, remember? So she's got a few years on her, almost as many as me. And a few of those systems had been around since the day she launched, I think. And it is really bright out here. I might have to put my sunglasses on. But I'm not complaining. Man, what a beautiful day up here in the mountains. But I did build myself, you know, I'm kind of a geek and use computers a lot. So I had built myself a spreadsheet to track expenses and upgrades and make a plan. And when I was doing that, I kind of broke that thing down into categories of upgrades or categories of improvements I was doing on there. And things were like things that will just make living aboard nicer, or things that are like critical for better navigation, you know, necessary improvements that I just wanted because they would be, you know, make life a little easier, that kind of thing. I tried to kind of categorize it. So when it came time to spend money, I could kind of have some methodology for picking what was the most important thing to do at the time. So let's run through my categories here, and I will continue my little stroll through the mountains, but I'll probably pop us back into the home office and we'll run through the spreadsheet a little bit, and I'll talk about what I've done, what's left to do, and how much money I've spent. Well, hopefully the wind is not giving us too much trouble here. I got my little dead cat on my little microphone. Today I brought you down by Chimney Rock near Capitol Reef National Park. That's Chimney Rock right over my right shoulder back there. And we're gonna hike up onto that bluff up there behind me and have a look around. So let's do that. Well, I paused for a minute to have a seat to kind of run through the stuff I was gonna talk about how I kind of organized my list of upgrades and so forth for the boat. So what I did is I had a category of things that I called creature comfort essentials. And that was things like making sure that the furnace worked and the freshwater system worked and all that kind of thing. I did some plumbing on the hot water heater at one point and got mocked in the comments for using black pipe, which, yes, whoever told me that was not going to work was right. I do sometimes get a little rust-colored water out of the hot water side, so I'll have to fix that. But anyway, there was a whole category of things that we called creature comfort essentials. And then we had a category of things that I called creature comfort upgrades. Now, the stereo system most definitely counts as a creature comfort upgrade. I could get by with just singing to myself out there while we're out boating around. But it's much nicer to be able to turn stereo on, link the Bluetooth phone up to it, and let Pink Floyd or Alan Parsons Project or somebody like that sing to me. So there's that category of things like the creature comfort upgrades. And then there were the operational essentials and operational upgrades. Now the operational essentials are things like the anchor windlass. When I first got the boat, the anchor windlass would freewheel down, but it wouldn't come back up without tripping the breaker. And yeah, way back in the beginning, I worked on that a little bit and found that kind of inside of that old windlass, all of the grease there was very little lubrication on anything and kind of seized the whole thing up. So didn't really have any chance of saving that. So I put a new Lumar winch on the front. And one thing, just a quick note on that, I do plan on, I've mentioned while the boat's hauled out, I want to put more anchor chain on there. And in doing so, I think what I'll probably also do is install the chain counter. So the windlass was all wired up for a chain counter, but I didn't install one to begin with. But I think I will, and I'll see if I can't kind of split the cable and put a counter indicator up at the upper helm and one at the lower helm, because the main control is at the lower helm, but at the upper helm I use the handheld remote control to run it from up there. So in both instances, it'd be nice to know how much anchor chain we got out there. And then we had the operational upgrades. I think I mentioned that. Hopefully I got all four of my categories down there. But operational upgrades are things like the lower helm station getting the Simrad, the smaller Simrad, multifunction display down there. So we got our chart plotter and our radar overlay and all that stuff down at the lower station as well as at the upper station, which makes operating the boat kind of the same whether I'm up top or down below. So that's one of the kind of what we call the essential upgrades, because we could have got by without it. And I think the old owner had said he mostly always ran a boat from up top because he felt like that gave him a better view of what was in front of him so he didn't hit a log or something like that. But there's times when I've wanted to run the boat from down below. So there's that stuff. Things like the tank watch system would also fall into that category of operational upgrades, because it wasn't absolutely necessary, but it's nice to have it to be able to just see how the tanks are holding up. And on that note, I still would like to see if there's not some way to get some fuel tank level indication around the boat other than having to crawl back in the back. So the house lithium bank upgrade, how do we categorize that one? Is that an operational upgrade or an operational essential? Kind of, I'd call that an essential in my mind, because the old lead acid batteries that were in there were not holding a charge very well. So when we were trying to be out off of shore power on the anchor, we just had a couple of hours of house bank before that bank of batteries would be dead, which would then kill the inverter, and so no power. So that one, probably that was an essential upgrade to the operational stuff, because again, I said, the reason you do all this stuff is to make your time using the boat better, and it would have been a real hassle to not be able to tie up at anchor anywhere and have more than an hour or so of electricity on the boat. So that was a big one, and that included the batteries and all of the Victron controllers and the little touch screen on the thing and the DC to DC chargers and the wake speed controllers for the alternators. So that was a big one, and that was a big upgrade. And I didn't do that. I had the yard do that. That S3 Maritime guys did the work on that one. So those are the things that I've kind of used to have this upgrade process a little bit under control. I will also just say that, it's currently December down here by Capitol Reef, and I'm going to spin you around and point a couple of things out. So stand by, you're in You're ready to swing. Okay, so way down there, well, not that far away, but you can see that's the little parking spot for this trailhead. Again, we're on the Chimney Rock trailhead. And the only vehicle in that parking lot right now is my Tacoma. And that highway you see there is the main highway from Torrey, Utah to Capitol Reef. Capitol Reef is the entrance to the visitor center, and the actual entrance is that way just about a mile or two. So we're technically in Capitol Reef by now, but we haven't hit the visitor center. But let's just have a listen, shall we? There's not a sound out here right now, besides some intrepid YouTuber yammering away. I see I have what you may have saw I had a backpack on. I got my camera bag with me, and I've seen a couple of places that I do want to take some pictures. So I'm going to put you back in my pocket, and we're going to hike off of the trail, but we're going to go over there, if I can point it out, to that little bush right there, that little tree, and we're going to see if we can have that in the foreground and some of this stuff in the background. If you're a mountain person, you would probably be laughing at me right now because I am about 20 feet back from the cliff edge here, and it's as close as I care to get, but here we go. We've made it up to where we're kind of straight across from Chimney Rock here, so stand by. Well, there we go. I got you a whole 360-degree panorama. There's the truck. All right, well, I just had to have a seat for a minute in front of this gnarly old bush back here. So if you've come to Utah and you've done the name brand national parks, you know, if you did Zion's and Canyonlands and Arches and then jetted back to Vegas or wherever you flew into, you missed a gem here if you didn't come to Capitol Reef. Now, don't everybody come to Capitol Reef because we don't want to overcrowd it here, and it's a different place than Zion's, and obviously Arches is Arches, but this place is amazing. And again, we're not really on the road in. There's a road once you get to the visitor center. There's a road that goes down in, and it kind of parallels that water pocket fold, which I think I've shown you before when we've done the Burr Trail. And there are several places there where you can go into the washes and then take hikes. And there's some of the early explorers carved their names in the mountains, and there's some petroglyphs and whatnot. So it's a cool place. All right, well, I suppose now as we're categorizing this stuff and kind of figuring out what's what, the stern thrusters is one that I haven't really categorized yet. I think in my spreadsheet at home I have it as an operational necessity. However, those people who think you don't need thrusters if you're a good captain would probably call it an upgrade, maybe even a creature comfort upgrade. But for me, in my situation, being, you know, pretty much a lot of the time, or most of the time, or 99% of the time a solo boater, I consider it an operational necessity. I need to be able to positively control the boat no matter what's going on. So that's how I'm categorizing that one. Now, if we want me to dive into the actual cost of some of these big ticket things, I'll have to go back to the computer to do that. Things I haven't touched on is obviously the galley upgrade. That was a creature comfort upgrade. You know, I wanted to get rid of the propane and go electric and, you know, get a microwave in there that worked, and the convection oven and whatnot, and get rid of that other oven that didn't work. So, you know, all that stuff was a creature comfort upgrade, although it became a necessity. If you recall, when I started that whole kitchen galley thing, it was when I just was trying to change the faucet out in the kitchen sink, and that thing snowballed into the whole galley being redone. If you haven't watched me run through those videos, that's back in history a little bit. But yeah, that one wasn't all that expensive, but it did take quite a bit of time. So let's do this. The sun's getting fairly low in the sky, and I should probably get down off this plateau before I'm doing it in the dark, because that would not be cool. So I'll do that, and most likely, unless I run into a bighorn sheep or something like that to show you, the next time you see me, I believe we'll be kind of sitting down in front of the computer and run through some of these big ticket things, and we'll see how much I spent. Do I really want to know? I don't know, maybe not. But you're probably curious, and I am too, to some degree, so let's go figure that out. Okay, well, as promised, I am back here in the house now, and we are going to go through the numbers. I'm going to tell you how much I spent on all this stuff, so strap in and let's just dive right in. We started off with the galley upgrade. So in the galley, if you remember, we're talking about a new faucet and sink, which started the whole process, an Acuva water purification system, and UV purification system with filter that goes underneath there that's plumbed into it to clean up our drinking water, a new induction cooktop, 2-burner cooktop, a convection / microwave oven, new countertops, and a new backsplash, and most importantly of all, my new wine storage drawers underneath the cooktop where the old oven used to be. So that's what we did for the galley upgrade. Okay, after the galley, then we did the stereo upgrade. And if you recall with the stereo, we put in a Garmin Fusion stereo head. We put in a couple of the little round remote control units for that. We put some speakers up on the flybridge because the speakers up there were all rotted out and completely dead. And we put a set of new amplifiers in because while we thought initially the amps that were in there were good, they turned out not to be. So that was the whole stereo upgrade. On the aft deck, we resurrected our little bar area by putting a new refrigerator underneath the counter in the bar area where there used to be an old ice maker that was dead. And we put a new faucet on that sink up there. So really pretty minor upgrade, but it was important. We got cold beer and drinks up on the aft deck now. And then we did a fair amount of lighting upgrades on the interior. We put in a bunch of the Philips Hue light strips, some in the kitchen, in the galley, some in the master salon, the master cabin, up on the aft deck. We put a bunch of that stuff in. And then the existing ceiling lights that are kind of recessed up in a can there were these round 5.5-inch standard bulb lights, you know, with an incandescent bulb in there. And wherever possible, as I was changing those out, when we had a burned out bulb or a broken light, we put LED lights in their place. So lighting got kind of a workover on the whole boat. All right, so roughly what we spent is about $4,000 on the galley. We're calling it about $2,300 on the whole stereo upgrade with amps and speakers and the head unit and all that involved. The back bar area on the aft deck was only about $475 for the fridge and the faucet. And then for lighting, we spent about $800 overall on all that lighting stuff. So not too bad there as well. The grand total, if we add all that up, we come up with about $7,575. So that's our creature comforts total, basically. Okay, so operationally, let's start at the start of the boat, at the front of the boat. We put that new Lumar anchor windlass up there. And I did put a new heavy anchor up there, heavier than what we had to begin with. So I've got a good heavy anchor, and I've got a new winch that's heavy enough to pull that thing up. and new deck switches and so forth. And there is still a little bit to go on that because I do still want to put a new set of chain on there that's 300 feet long. So currently we've got 100 working feet. When we had the boat up there at S3 Maritime, one of the major kind of running gear things that we had them do at the back of the boat now is we had new shaft seals put on the prop shafts. If you recall, I couldn't get those seals apart to get new packing material in there. And one of the prop shafts had some damage, so we put a new prop shaft on, and then we put new cutlass bearings in there. Now that stuff is all really essential running gear stuff, but it was also probably the original gear that came on the boat. So I would expect us to easily get 10 to 15 to 20 years of use out of that stuff that we put on there. Additionally, while we had the thing there at S3 Maritime, the main reason we took it up there was to upgrade our house bank of batteries and the control systems associated with all that. So I wanted to get rid of the old lead acid batteries and go with lithium phosphate. And so we did that. We put all new batteries in for the house bank. We put a new AGM battery on the starting unit. We put a new AGM battery on the generator starter. We already had an AGM on the front bow thruster. Then there's also the new wake speed controllers for the alternators so that the lithium stuff gets charged properly. There's DC to DC chargers for the other batteries, the starting batteries, so they keep getting charged up. There's the battery management system and the touchscreen control for that. So there's quite a bit of stuff that makes up that system. That was by far the biggest upgrade, and that we're calling the kind of house bank / Victron system. Since I don't live on the boat full time, when I'm back here in Utah, I'm always stressing a little bit, is everything okay on the boat? So I have installed a couple of remotely accessible webcams. I've got one on the back of the back deck looking back, so I could see if someone were to break in and get on the boat, I'd see them coming in. And then I've got one inside the salon looking forward, and I can pop those up from here in Utah anytime on my phone and see what's going on. That really gives me a little peace of mind. And I also installed that little weather station so I can see what the weather's doing, both outside the boat and inside of the boat. I can see what the inside temperature is, the outside temperature. I can see how much rain we're getting, how much wind, which direction it's blowing from, all that stuff. And again, I can access that remotely, so I can kind of see what's going on weather-wise and how the boat's doing, and that again brings a lot of peace of mind when I'm down here 600 miles away or 800, whatever it is. On that lower helm area, before, that was kind of not really used all that much as a navigation station, so I pulled out the old big clunky old depth finder and I put a new Simrad multifunction display, an MFD, down there on the lower helm. Hooked all that stuff together with the upper helm so it's all networked together, and then we also installed a new Simrad radar so that the radar is integrated into all that as well. So the radar overlay can be laid over the top of the chart so we can see what's on the chart. We can see a boat showing up on AIS, and we can also see its signature from the radar. And we can see that now from the upper helm or the lower helm. So we did kind of modernize all of the navigation stuff so that it's good from either inside the cabin down below or up top on the flybridge. And lastly, but not least important of all, we are currently still finishing up our little project of putting on stern thrusters from side shift. So we have got the two thrusters. We had to buy 4 big heavy-duty AGM batteries to power those, a charger to charge them back up. We got the dual control so that we control both our bow thruster and our stern thruster from lower helm, upper helm, or from a handheld remote. So the whole system, so we can send the boat sideways either direction from basically anywhere on the boat now. So here's how the tally works out on this stuff. We had about $4,500 wrapped up in the windlass and the anchor tackle and all that stuff, their ground tackle. We spent about $6,000 back on the back props to get the shaft seals sorted out, new cutlass bearings and the new prop shaft there. The house bank / lithium Victron update, that was a big one. That was about $17,500 for all of that stuff all combined. Remote monitoring, not so bad. We spent about $1,000 on the cameras and the weather system all combined, so we can look at the boat remotely. The lower helm station and hooking the two multi-function displays together, the chart plotters, the radar, all that stuff, we spent about $5,500 to get that done. And we're at about $12,800 on the stern thruster upgrade, and that includes the thrusters themselves and the batteries and the charger. So if we do the big tally now, we're looking at about $47,300 on operational gear, combined with that $75 on the creature comfort stuff. Rounded up, we're right around $55,000 in upgrades and modernization things I've done to the boat since I bought it. All right, well, that's kind of a holy shit number, right? So I think that's what I said when I saw it for the first time after I've done all the math there. But there's a couple things I do want to kind of clarify a little bit. Remember, I've been working my way up in boats sizes over the years. So, the last boat I had was a 32-foot Sea Ray, and I sold that boat. So, we had some money to put towards the boat itself. And most of these upgrades were done while I still had my IT company in operation. And so I was still collecting a paycheck. So all this gear is paid for, and it wasn't put on credit cards. And then the other thing that I kind of have pondered as I was sitting thinking about this was, all right, well, let's say I did take 110 grand and added 55 grand to it. So what are we, $165,000, $170,000, 175, let's call it. Could I go out today and buy a 42-foot boat that was maybe 20 years newer, that already had, navigation systems to upper and lower helm, and already had a Garmin stereo in it, and the galley was already nice and freshened up, and had bow thrusters and stern thrusters? And honestly, I don't really think I could. I still look at boats, even though I've got what I think is my last one for a while, but I still watch the market out there, and I think there's a pretty big delta between what I've spent and what I would have to spend to get the same equivalent out there. So I don't feel terribly bad about where we're at with this stuff. And I hope this has been a little bit helpful for those of you who are kind of following along, just to, again, these were not precise numbers. Some of the invoices, I had to dig around and I rounded up and whatever, but I just wanted to do this to kind of give you a sense of what it takes to kind of look at these older boats and modernizing them to kind of bring them up to what's going on today. Granted, if I were to go buy a brand new 42-foot trawler today from almost anyone out on the market, it would already have lithium batteries in-house. It would already have all the Victron gear. It would probably have bow and stern thrusters, maybe even stabilizers, and all that kit would already be on there. And we'd be looking at $1 million easily, obviously, surely nowhere under $750,000. So it's all relative, it's just all relative. But if you think I'm crazy, then mostly folks who do have not been holding back. So tell me what you think. But I feel like this hasn't been too terribly bad, and it's been fun along the way, and I really feel like I'm getting the boat dialed in to be able to do what I want to do with it. So can't complain, I don't think. So that's about it for now. Thanks. And again, if you think I'm crazy, let me know. If you think I didn't do too bad, I wouldn't mind hearing that as well.